I want to start by telling you this is part two of attention deficit disorder. And in the first part, I gave what I think of as medical treatment that enables you to deal with it more effectively. And today I want to talk about systems that enable you to deal with it more effectively. First of all, I was in school. I just was always challenged. And even though maybe no one ever said you were the dumb kid, you always felt that way. Even though my parents didn't do that. My parents never one time made me feel badly about my grades or anything like that. In fact, they identified the one thing they thought I had a talent in, and they invested in that incredibly. I was musically talented, and from about 10 years old until really I was 16 or 17, they invested in music lessons for me at the University of Evansville Music Conservatory. And they did that, and they did make me practice. They did make me work at that. And that was a skill I was able to use later in life. And even in the moment, it gave me self-esteem that I would not have had. But when I was about 44 years old, I decided that I wanted a PhD and that I would go back to college to get a PhD. And I did just like everybody else. I began to apply at universities around me. And for whatever reason, they began to deny me. And sometimes they would call me in for an interview. And one of the committees said, we would like to see you do academic work in something other than your vocational field. Now, that's code for we'd like to see you do college work somewhere other than just a Bible college. And so I went back to college and got a master's degree from a secular university, and that was probably one of the most eye-opening things to me that I'd ever experienced. I had never been, honestly, outside of a church environment or a church school, or in some way, it was all related to a church. But it was an eye-opener. And after I got the master's degree, then I began to apply for PhD programs once again, and eventually got into a PhD program. I was going to do and did do the first semester at Temple University in Tokyo, of all places, Japan. And of course, I'd never been to Japan. And when I say semester, it was more like 3 weeks from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock each day, 5 days a week. We would go to class, and you did an entire semester in 3 weeks. But I stayed at the Prince George Hotel, which is in downtown Tokyo, at the Senegal station, which is how you come to know the city by subway stations. And that was interesting to me because I had never seen anything like that. But I stayed in the Prince George Hotel. It was probably about 35, maybe 40 stories high. It was a big hotel. I was on the floor that was about halfway up, probably 23, room 2023. And one day I was coming home from class and I was riding the subway, and the subway stations are underground, and they're much different than they are in the United States. If you've been to the ones in Washington, D.C. or New York City, they're just stations. They're just exchange places, where in Japan and in other places in the world like Paris, France, they are centers. I mean, they have copy stations, they have Staples, they have Starbucks, they have bakeries, they have restaurants, and in fact, some of the finest restaurants are in the subway stations. And that's how this was. It had a big place that you gathered, and so I kind of made my way through that and came out on top. And it was pouring down rain, and so I ran to my hotel, and when I got there, I had my backpack, and I made my way to the elevator, pushed the elevator, and went up to my floor. And when I got to my room, my key didn't work, and I was all wet, so I assumed it didn't work because it was wet. So I went back downstairs after placing my backpack right at my door. I went back downstairs to to the concierge and got another key made. And then I went back to my room, and the backpack was gone, and the key worked. I went inside, but there was no backpack. Now, the issue here was not just the backpack. The issue was the fact that I worked on a team of 5 other people. There were 5 of us, one from Lagos, Nigeria, one from Jerusalem, one from the Netherlands, one from New York City, And part of the PhD program was learning to work with people in other cultures, and that was not easy. That was not easy. And they had given me thumb drives to download all of their research onto my computer, which was in the backpack. So I had everybody's research in my computer, which was in the backpack, which had been stolen. That's right. And I frantically began to run up and down the stairwells, and I finally ended up down at the security office of the hotel and said, somebody has taken this. And they said, no, we don't think so. We don't think so. And I said, are you not going to call the police? And I had agreed to meet several of the students for dinner that night. And so we were all sitting at dinner. I said, you know what, I've lost my backpack. And I said, I don't know where it is. I said, I think it's been stolen. And I said, all of our research was on my computer, which was in the backpack. And I mean, all night long, I'm thinking about this backpack that I've got and how somebody stole it, and it didn't seem to bother anybody except me. About 7:30 the next morning, I get a call, and it's the concierge. And he said, sir, he said, someone from room 2102 has a backpack outside their door. And we would like for you to come down here and look at it and see if it's yours. And I did, and it was mine. 2102 was directly below my room. Okay, directly below my room, 2202. I was one floor above, but when you got off the elevator, the hallways looked just alike. And so I just went to the room I'd always gone to and thought I was at the right place. There wasn't anything wrong with my key. I was at the wrong room. Attention deficit disorder. In other words, my brain is not processing things all the way through because there are two sets of elevators. One set goes to 0 to 20, and the next set goes from 21 to like 45. And I'd gotten on the wrong elevator and dropped my backpack off at a door of somebody that was not my room, and I didn't find it. But that is so characteristic of someone with attention deficit disorder. First of all, Audible Book was transformational for me. It's a software that reads to you out loud. I mean, you can put anything into it and it will read it back to you. And that was just a game changer for me as far as, because my retention level was 10 times as great on what I hear as what I actually read. So that was a game changer. YouTube was a game changer for me. Being able to look things up and hear somebody speak on a subject, read on a subject that I chose. Audible Books, I wouldn't know how many are in that library of mine. There's multiple books in Audible Reader that I've purchased, and you know, the thing is, you can ride in the car and they read to you. Bible Project for it, that just, I'm an experiential learner, which means when I see something, feel something, and experience something, my retention on that and learning on that is just incredible. What I brought though to a PhD was something that I didn't know. First of all of us have something that we're gifted at. Even people with learning disabilities have huge gift areas that they may not be aware of. And I am somebody that intuitively, emotionally makes applications just constantly, where I don't learn a skill or learn something new or learn to use something new and then just stop thinking about it. It just constantly goes ideas. I think of myself as an idea person. And so when I began to research my area, it was incredible, the ideas that had never been, I'd never thought about. I never thought they had value, and they had incredible value. I'm going to show you something. This is an award I was given at the Chicago Conference of Connect the World in software technology application, and that's one of the things that I do well, the engineering of that. You would not think that about me. And this is number 2 award, at second place. And who was number 1? Chrysler Corporation. So the idea that this somehow you're not a good thinker is ridiculous. You just don't think like other people or in the same tracks and I became this software engineer who made application for people that otherwise you would never think about, who no one ever thought about. And you're going to see some of those things when I finish talking, the things that I invented, and patents, and just all kinds of things that I always thought I was the dumb kid. And before it's over with, I'm a researcher, a fellow at Virginia Tech, and I'm a guest lecturer at Penn State School of Engineering, PhD program. I'm a guest lecturer at Iowa State Engineering School. All of this because there was this gift in me that I never saw as a gift. I just always thought I could fix the television better than anybody else when it broke. In fact, make it better than it was. I just never stop. If I learn to use, or like the lawnmower, I learn how to make it better than what it was when we purchased it. My brain doesn't stop thinking about this once I know how. But there has to be system. Probably the most important thing is getting somebody to work with you that's the inverse of your gift. And what that means is, because my brain is just constantly going in all these different directions, I have to have this person that is the most structured, anal, retentive human being, a bean counter who's constantly pulling me back into a structure and a system. And I always found somebody after this who helped me do that. Ironically, my wife was a person who said from the very beginning, she said, "You're smart. You're intelligent. In fact, more so than anybody in your family." I never saw that. And she always saw it and encouraged me and was like, "Get on with it, man." I want to give you some tangible things to do so that you can actually apply these things other than just medication. One of the things that I do is every day I have identified what time of the day is the time when I am most apt to be focused. And that's from about 4 o'clock in the morning to about 8 o'clock. And I get up every day like that. And I get ready before I actually start writing or doing videos, or used to be prepare a sermon. It didn't matter. I just always have gotten up that early. And when I went back to school, I did the same thing. But I have a time that's about 3.5 to 4 hours each day where I think that I'm like everybody else. But that doesn't last very long. And I have to take, as I've said, then medication in order to stay focused. But you have to identify when that time is for you. The computer has been a game changer for me completely. And I couldn't say all of the great things that computer has done. Everything from Grammarly to Audible Reader to spell check, all of those things have revolutionized my life as far as writing and being able to feel comfortable in doing that. There are also tools that I use on the computers. Audible books, I've mentioned that. There's a brand new one called Autobites, which is they actually read books to you in just about 10 minutes. And it's very effective. It's very good. They've compressed the book down and they read that much of it to you. And I just think it's remarkable. I think it is important that you know what your limitations are. For instance, if I use headphones as I listen to YouTube videos, which have been incredible for me, it elevates how well I retain that. As you can imagine, there's no distractions. It elevates that incredibly. I'm an online learner, which means I have used online schools, online videos in order to teach myself. If I retain about 25% of what I hear, as opposed to about 10% of what I read. Most people do better than that. I don't do any better than that. However, if I do something tactile, which means that I'm actually participating in the process, then that's the best way that for me that I learn, and I think that's probably true of a lot of people as well. I am what you call an Imagineer, which means I have just tons of ideas, and as I get into sort of the layers of the onions, they just go every which way, and so I think that that is my gift, and everybody has a gift, even if you have attention deficit, that there is a gift that goes with that. And for me, it was the gift of making technical applications, designing software, creating hardware that emotionally connected to people. And that was something that I didn't know I could do. And in this video, I will show you some of the things that I did. And it's enabled me to become someone I never realized was in there. The final thing is, if you become involved in projects or things that you want to take to another level, you have to have another person that's the inverse of who you are. And you have to be able and willing to listen to that person. In other words, I'm not detailed, I'm not structured, so I have to have a detailed, structured person in my life that I will literally let boss me around in certain areas of my life. And that has been incredibly effective in making my attention deficit a gift, as opposed to something that constantly was dragging me down. Now, these are just tangible ideas, tangible thoughts that I have done in order to deal with the fact that I have attention deficit.